Grit and grace, that's how we grow. Step by step and child by child we know. There's power in the words we say. We lift the voices, light the way. Grit and grace, it's a journey we all share. For every child everywhere.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Grit and Grace, a literacy journey, where we dig into what is possible when research meets real-world practice in our schools. Today, we are honored, and I'm personally beyond thrilled, to sit down with one of the most influential voices in reading science, Dr. Jan Hasbrouck. Jan is a leading researcher, author, and trusted guide for educators across the globe. Dr. Hasbrouck has dedicated her career to helping all of us understand what truly drives reading success and what gets in the way. Jan Hasbrouck has not only been a close friend of mine for many years, but she has also been my most trusted mentor in the field of education and all things literacy. So I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to bring her knowledge and her wisdom to all of you today. Her work has truly, completely transformed my career in education. So in this episode, we are going to dive deep into fluency, what it is not, because I do think there's a lot of confusion around it, and why it matters more than ever for comprehension. We are going to talk about what high quality fluency instruction really looks like in classrooms, common missteps to avoid, and how educators can coach and plan for fluency in ways that unlock deeper understanding and comprehension for every learner. So, whether you are a classroom teacher, coach, or school leader, this conversation is going to be full of clarity, wisdom, and practical insight that you can use right away in your classroom and schools. So let's get started. Welcome, Jan Hasbrouck. Thank you so much for being here today.
What a pleasure, Angie. This is a real treat when you reached out to me and invited me to do this. Absolutely. I'm excited to have this conversation, an ongoing conversation. You and I have been talking around and about these topics for many, many, many years.
Many years now. Yes. And I learn every time I'm in your presence. So I'm excited to have time to talk to you tonight. So, Jan, you've been such a guiding light in the field of reading science, the science of reading. I mean, you were the science of reading before we had even coined the phrase, the science of reading, but especially in fluency. So, for those listeners who are newer to the work, what initially drew you into this specific area of literacy?
It's a little bit, I came in a little bit through the back door on this one, actually.
Okay.
I had, when I first really started focusing in on fluency, I was a reading specialist. I had gotten my undergrad and stayed on for a master's degree at the University of Oregon and studied with Zig Engelmann, if any of your listeners know about that guy who essentially invented direct instruction. This notion of systematically designed explicit instruction is what I learned from my first entry into teacher education, because I got to study with Zig. So I knew a lot about what we would call evidence-based practice. It was evidence-based practice, but this was in the early 70s. So I actually had a pretty good start in terms of what good instruction looked like. And I had been, then I went out into the field and actually taught kids as a reading specialist. But then my job changed. I was asked to take on the role of instructional coach. And I right away realized that this is a really different job. And I wasn't really sure what was going on with that job. So I just reached out. I was still living near the University of Oregon. Actually, I could ride my bike over there. So I found that there was a course being taught by this brand new professor named Jerry Tyndall, who had just arrived from the University of Minnesota. And he was teaching a course. I think the title of the course was Consultation, but the description sounded like coaching, how professional educators can work with their peer colleagues to improve the outcomes of students. But okay, I think that's what I'm supposed to do. So I took this evening course because I was out being a reading specialist all day, or a coach now. But in the evening, Wednesday evening, I think it was, once a week, I went in to take this course from him. And Jerry had just graduated from the University of Minnesota, where he was part of a team of people who essentially talk about Zig Engelmann inventing direct instruction. The team that Jerry worked on invented curriculum-based measurement, including oral reading fluency. It had just been invented. I mean, they invented it and then did a few years of the early stages of establishing validity, reliability, that kind of thing. But Jerry was just a zealot for, if you're going to be good at helping your peer colleagues be better, you've got to make data-informed decisions. And the tool to use in reading is this thing called the ORF, oral reading fluency. Listen to a kid, read for 1 minute, and you calculate words correct per minute, and that's going to give you so much information. And I was not impressed. Not impressed at all with a 1 minute assessment. Are you kidding me? That was going to, the kids didn't practice and you didn't ask comprehension questions, and like, no, I don't think so. But I was curious. He was adamant and he showed me the early research. And so of course I went and used it with my kids and my own students. I entered a doctoral program at Jerry's suggestion, and really started looking at this measurement called oral reading fluency, and determined that he was right. He and his team were right. ORF is a fabulous little tool. I know we're not going to spend, our whole time talking about the ORF, and I've done that many times. But then I really started thinking about what it is and what it really measures. And is it really measuring what I was trained to call reading fluency? And it really wasn't. It wasn't looking at all the aspects of reading fluency that includes prosody and includes a connection with comprehension. ORF is an indicator of comprehension, but fluency, what we would call passage, what I've learned to be more specific, passage reading fluency is a multidimensional construct. It does include words read correctly, and rate is, or pacing of reading is certainly important. So those are considerations, but that expression and prosody, which is a reflection of comprehension. And I just started looking at passage reading fluency more deeply as separate from the assessment called oral reading fluency, and my own grappling with the differences in those two things and the value of oral reading fluency, but the importance of teaching real fluency in all its complexity became kind of my full-time focus. So since that time, I've been grappling with those things, doing research in both of those things, that little assessment, but also what reading fluency, passage reading fluency really is. And people continue, like you, to ask me, I'm so honored, what my thoughts are about those things. But it was really that very backdoor. I wanted to learn how to be a coach. The first thing, the tool I was handed was an assessment tool called oral reading fluency. And that started me on this now 30-some year quest of trying to figure it all out.
Journey. What a journey. And oh my gosh, what you've learned and what you've shared with all the rest of us and all those areas. So I want to right out of the gate address what I have found to be one of the biggest, most common misconceptions about fluency. And that is that it is just about speed. I've shared this with you. I've gone into rooms as a consultant, also as an instructional coach, and people were saying, oh, we're doing fluency. And it sounded like speed reading. I mean, students would just start and plow through the words, wouldn't stop for punctuation. And I think they heard the word fluency.
Yeah.
Something happened. I mean, the word that was said was fluency, and they just heard read fast. So can you kind of unpack what fluency really is and how it's so deeply connected to comprehension?
Yes, and I agree with you, Angie. That would be the biggest misconception that I continue to see. And that alone is one of the reasons I can't seem to retire, is because
Yes, we need you.
people look to me and say, "Oh, you know about fluency, so explain this to us." And we do need to start with that aspect, which is one of the reasons I am trying to be more precise when I'm talking about what I mean and what I think most educators mean by fluency. What they mean is passage reading fluency or text reading fluency. I haven't quite decided which of those terms, so sometimes I say passage or text reading fluency, because the word fluency by itself has value and importance, but it's used outside of the field of reading. We talk about speaking a language fluently. We talk about math facts fluency. And often those things, well, they always are if we're talking about it. It's accuracy and rate. It is those two things. But we often, for some reason, conflate fluency, reading fluency with speed. And we haven't always been well supported in making that distinction, that it's not just rate is there, pace is part of it. But even the National Reading Panel, in their chapter back in the year 2000, that very, very important and valuable National Reading Panel report, in their chapter on fluency, they right off the bat, they talked about fluency is the ability to read quickly, accurately, and with expression. They put quickly first. And so it's things like that. Even the experts that we turn to sometimes aren't as helpful as possible. I think the most helpful thing is to try to wrap your head around what passage reading fluency really is, which is the ability to read text accurately at a reasonable pace or speed with good expression. Those are the three components, but I always try to emphasize accuracy first. And in the book on fluency that Deb Glazer and I wrote, we talk about reasonable accuracy, appropriate pace with suitable expression. But then we also tag on, because the only value of passage reading fluency is comprehension. We don't read to sound good. We don't read to hit a words correct per minute benchmark. We read to understand and enjoy and be motivated and learn, but it's all about comprehension. So we put that in our definition too, that this reasonable accuracy, appropriate pace, suitable expression leads to, we hope, you can't guarantee, but we hope that if it's truly fluent reading, it leads to accurate and deep comprehension. And we even tagged on motivation, because there's less of a research-based, evidence-based connection between fluency and motivation. There's a strong evidence between comprehension and fluency, not so much motivation, but like you, Angie, we care about the real world, not just what the research says. And in the real world, the kids who struggle with fluency are just not our motivated readers. Now, we all know how complex motivation is. There's a lot of highly fluent readers who are not motivated either. We're still trying to figure out how to motivate readers. But we do know if they struggle with fluency, they're not going to be motivated. So complexity is what we need to be thinking about. Pace or speed is there, but it's not the first thing. It's not the most important thing. And it's never about as fast as possible, because it's about comprehension first. And you can read either too quickly or too slowly. So there's a sweet spot in there, appropriate speed or appropriate rate or appropriate pace of reading.
didn't get to tell you because you had to rush right out for a flight, but I recently just heard you speak
Yeah.
at the National Reading League Conference in
Mhm.
Chicago.
Yes.
And, I go to every single chance I get, listen to
I
every
know you
single
do.
time.
I know
I
you
know
do.
every webinar, every presentation. I thought that presentation, though, had the most clarity of
Hmm.
any presentation I've heard you speak at.
Hmm.
Of any that I've ever heard you deliver, when you were stressing those things, and because I adore Deb Glazer, and when you were
Yeah.
talking about adding in motivation and the piece of comprehension, and then when you were so clear and precise when you talked about it separately as fluency and then the passage reading fluency. And I don't know if you could hear because you were up front on the stage, but there was kind of a gasp in the room, and it's like that aha.
Aha
I don't,
moment.
yeah. And I kind of turned around and you could like see people's faces. I'm
Mm.
like, oh, that landed. I felt like
Okay.
that landed.
That's
So
wonderful feedback, Angie. That's wonderful feedback. It was lovely to be in that fairly large ballroom with
huge
a
room.
lot of
Yes.
people. And
Yes.
I'm so happy to hear that it was clear. And
Yeah.
um, that is in part, I mean, I'm getting more clarity. This is a really complex thing. I mean, it
It
doesn't come
is.
close to the complexity of comprehension, but it is complex, and it's complex to understand. And then I hope that I am getting better at my own understanding of it, but my ability to describe it and share it with people, because I certainly have had along the way my epiphany moments, my ahas, like, oh yes, now I understand it just that much better. Um, yeah, because it's far more complex, and it's
Yes.
so important that we get it right.
Right? I know. One of the phrases too that you've said, and I'm a bit off script, so I'll get to the next question. But one of my takeaways from you early on, because I was one of those people when I heard fluency, I thought, oh, so students need to read fast. But you taught me accuracy first, foremost, and forever. And that stuck with me. Accuracy first, foremost, and forever. And I've quoted that. So, how does fluent reading free up cognitive resources for deeper understanding? And what should educators be watching for to ensure students are not just reading quickly, but they're reading meaningfully?
Well, I would say the answer to that is to back ourselves up away from actually passage reading fluency or text reading fluency, at the and looking at the evidence about how we get to that point of fluent passage reading, looking at the research guidance from Marianne Wolf. And there's an article particularly that she wrote in 2001 with her colleague, Katzer Cohen. So it's Wolf and Katzer Cohen, that talked about the importance of understanding that that goal of skillful passage reading is developed in progressions that start, they talk about in this article that I can almost quote from memory. That was definitely one of my epiphanies reading that article. It develops in progressions at the letter sound, the word, the phrase level. Once we put words into phrases, meaningful phrases and sentences, paragraphs, then we get the syntax and semantics involved in all of that. But we pay attention to the development of we should be. So we need our preschool, our kindergarten, our first grade teachers well before children are reading text or passages to help ensure that true fluency is developed, because it develops at the letter, the sound, the word, the phrase, and the text or passage level. And we should also be paying attention, because remembering what fluency means, the complexity of fluency, it is accuracy first, foremost, and forever, but it is appropriate rate or pace, and it is expression. And we can pay attention at least to those first two things, accuracy and pace or rate, at the letter level and the sound level and the word level. And because we don't care about fluency unless it's in the service of comprehension, then we bring in connecting to meaning as soon as we possibly can. And for years, I used to say, we bring in connecting it to meaning at the word level. But I watched a little 2-year-old, not even quite 2-year-old, look at a letter that his nanny, who happened to be my daughter, but his nanny had taught him letters and sounds, along with developing his language. And this little kid saw a capital L, and he didn't say L or ul. He looked at that letter and said Lulu, and that's the name of his dog. And that was an epiphany moment for me too. Just thought, from the earliest stages, these letters, these shapes that are so arbitrary, if we can connect it, and especially if it's some connection that's meaningful and emotional, like your dog, or like, there's an M, McDonald's, I'm hungry, I want some French fries, or whatever it is, bring in those components. So Deb Glaser actually came up with this framework for instruction that for fluency, for that outcome, that we want that ability to read text fluently, starting at the letter, sound, word level. In her framework for this, and we wrote about it in our book, is triple A. And the 3 A's stand for accuracy, first, foremost, and forever. Automaticity, because automaticity is the correct word to use when we're combining accuracy and rate together. That term is automaticity, and that's what we should be doing. We never, ever think about rate all by itself. We start with accuracy, add in rate, build it in, and so now we're talking about automaticity. And then access meaning as soon as we can. This letter, do you know of something that this letter stands for? M, mommy, or McDonald's, or L, your dog's name is Lulu, or A for apple, or J is the first name of your letter, the first letter of your name. Make meaning as part of it. What is that letter? What is it? What does it? So knowing it, then knowing it more instantly, which is really getting back to part of your question, is why, what is the effect of fluency on comprehension? That ability to make the recognition of all those components, letters, sounds, words, instantaneous, precognitive, recognized, the work of those amazing neuropsychologists who have actually measured the speed with which a brain can recognize a word is milliseconds, which it's less than an eye blink. And how that's measured, I don't know, but it's fascinating, and fluent instruction that truly builds fluency, which is the accuracy, the automaticity, and the expression eventually. But the instruction focusing on accuracy, automaticity, and accessing meaning from the very beginning leads the brain to have that ability to instantaneously recognize eventually words and phrases and connect it, because you've done such a good job teaching accuracy, which is not just knowing what the word or the letter is, but knowing what it means. That's part of accuracy too. That's why it's so important. It's not just, I look at that word and I see that it says because, but I know the function of that word, or I see the word and it says elephant and I know what that means. It's the accuracy in the identification, but also knowing what that word means or how it functions, like the word because, how it functions. That's all part of fluency instruction. And that we can and need to be doing with our 2-year-olds and our 3-year-olds. And that, if we do that well, that will get more and more kids to, when we're first introducing text to them, and we will introduce text to them using AAA. Let's look at the words and read the words and make sure we can read them accurately. Very nice. Now you know all those words. Let's go back and read it with automaticity, make it closer and closer to the speed of speech. And now let's look, oh, there's an exclamation mark, or we're reading about somebody who's very angry. Let's put expression into it. We do that all the way, and we don't leave a sentence until we know that the students have paid attention to what it means.
Thank you for explaining that. And I failed to say at the beginning that my regular co-host, my sweet little daughter, Gretchen, is not able to be with us tonight. She is under the weather. But I must say that's going to be her favorite part. Her love is early childhood and early language. So thank you for clearing that up. And I just want to compliment you and Deb Glazer. The triple A is brilliant. And I hope that sticks with people. Accuracy, automaticity, and access meaning, because just if they remember that part, I think that really helps clear up a lot. So one of the other misconceptions is, what do you do? How do you intervene with fluency? And I know a common misconception is, well, let's then practice and have kids read for 1 minute and just keep repeatedly timing them. So I know that that is a misconception. So in your experience, what are the signs that a student's fluency struggles are impacting their comprehension? And then Jan, what should intervention look like in those cases?
Well, I would have to say I have no idea what the intervention is going to look like until I meet that actual student, because fluency interventions, like all good interventions, need to be individually determined based on data that we've collected about what that student already knows and what they need to learn. And which means that data is data beyond the lovely, wonderful, simple little ORF assessment. My favorite tool, my go-to assessment. I am not going to assess anybody's reading without doing an ORF. But if I find, and often the students that I'm assessing using ORF, the reason I'm assessing them is because we're pretty sure they're not at benchmark on ORF. I'm an interventionist. That's what I do. So I rarely get to hear those kids who are at or above benchmark. So most of the students I assess are going to be struggling. They're going to be slightly or significantly below benchmark on an ORF. That's fabulous information. That tells me they are unable to read grade level text fluently. So what I might do, logically, what I would do after that would be to turn my attention to a different type of assessment that would be a skills diagnostic assessment. One of the first things I might do would be if I'm assessing a fifth grader who does not read fifth grade text at benchmark, I might give this student a third grade passage or a second grade passage or possibly a fourth grade passage. Just depend how far below benchmark were they. Are they slightly? I might try a fourth grade passage or a third or a second grade passage and have them read that to me so that I can listen for their ability to read with accuracy, automaticity. Can they access meaning? Because I made up a fifth grader here, because this fifth grader struggled with reading fifth grade text. And I found that in this case, this student could read third grade text pretty well. I want to know why. Why is the student not able to read fifth grade text? What's the difference between third grade text and fifth grade text? It's usually the words are a little bit bigger and longer. So that indicates to me that this student is likely got some gaps in their phonics and decoding. So I'm going to pull out a phonics screener or diagnostic assessment and figure out what's going on. Where is it? Can they read one syllable words, two syllable words? Is it prefixes, suffixes? What are the gaps and holes? So I can add that to my list of things to do in intervention. I'm also for sure going to look at the top of Scarborough's rope, I'm going to be sure that this student is understanding what they read. Do they have sufficient background knowledge, vocabulary? Are they understanding? Is the syntax or semantics of text getting in their way? I'm going to be paying attention to that as I'm reading passages. But if there's seems to be big gaps in that, I might do some more specific assessments in those areas. If it's a very severe deficit, I might run and find a speech language pathologist to do a more assessment. But then the intervention to help this student who's not at benchmark on an oral reading fluency assessment is going to be multifaceted. It's going to be phonics and decoding work, because most students lack fluency. That's one of the reasons. It's going to include vocabulary and building their background knowledge. And it's going to be practicing in text using AAA. We're going to read passages accurately. We're going to practice until we've reached automaticity, and they're going to be accountable for letting me know that they have accessed the meaning of that text. And if they haven't, we're going to do more work until they do. So every fluency, so I'm being a little flip when I say I don't know what a fluency intervention looks like. What I mean, of course, is that it needs to be individually tailored for the child. But you're also going to find, if you have a classroom of 30 and 15 of them are struggling with fluency, a lot of those kids are going to need similar things. So it's not like you need to have 15 different intervention groups, but some of the students are going to need a lot of pretty basic decoding as part of their intervention. Some are going to need just a little bit of that. It really is. They know how to read words. They really don't have the automaticity yet, or they've got automaticity, but somewhere along the line they never learned how to pay attention to what they're reading, the accessing meaning as part. So there could be 3 different sort of mini intervention groups, heavy duty phonics along with text reading. There could be work on larger words and more complex text. And there could be some students who are just really learning to essentially pay attention to what they're reading in general. And of course, then there could be students who need some of that plus a whole lot more of language intervention.
I love that you explained all of that so beautifully and just hammered home the idea that it's not just this one size fits all approach. It is not. It's more complex than that. And we really do have to dig into the data to really determine what the students need. And listeners, it's so important if you notice that she said a diagnostic, that benchmark doesn't often give us that. So we've got to follow that up with a diagnostic to really look at what these students need. So thank you for that. Well, as always, brilliant explanation for that. So let's talk now about, we addressed intervention. Let's talk about just regular classroom instruction. What are a few, in your opinion, of the hallmark practices that signal really good fluency instruction? What does that look like in the classroom?
For students who are lucky enough to be reading at the term we can think about as instructional level, they're instructional at their grade level. They can read their grade level text, which of course these days we're moving away from the notion of leveled text and more toward grade level text. But I was just working with some teachers in Wisconsin, and they had been only taught about using leveled text, and they really didn't have any other way of thinking of grade level. If you take my leveled readers away, how do I know what grade level is? And that's a reasonable question. And there isn't something super precise and scientific that we can turn to. but we have lexile levels and some general notions, and that's all it is. I mean, we don't have a scientific definition of what fourth grade level text is or what fifth grade level text is. It's not, it's just sort of an agreement. We look at Common Core standards for here's the kinds of things that we should have at those texts. But anyway, once we have students who have received all that good instruction along the way and they can read grade level text, we want to keep them fluent and we want to continue to build their fluency, which does not mean reading faster and faster and faster. It means, in fact, the research that Jerry Tyndall and I have done over the last 30 some years shows that that number of words correct per minute, that automaticity number, really levels out around fifth grade and then stays at about 150 as kind of the minimal 50th percentile. And Tim Rosinski has done work with older students and found the same thing up until college. 150 is kind of this place. So until then, our students are increasing in their words correct per minute, but then it levels out. So since I've sort of landed on fifth grade, you've got fifth graders who are all reading at minimum without practice on a cold read of grade level text at around 150 or a little bit higher. What does fluency instruction look like for those kids, or fourth grader or seventh grade or whatever? It means we want to keep them, we want to teach them how to read with accuracy, automaticity, and accessing meaning at increasingly difficult text. And we teach them how to do that, not just here, take a grade level book and go over in the corner and read it. I mean, I would love to give children the opportunity to do that from time to time. But the instruction, the teaching, we want them to get better. If we just give them opportunity to stay reading fifth grade level text or whatever grade level there is, they may not get better. And that is what instruction is. And I am really grateful that Tim Shanahan has written his new book about,
Yes,
where is it? I have it on my desk here. Leveled readers,
leveled readers.
Because
Yes.
it's such a good book. He's been talking about this for at least over a decade, that we are doing our students a disservice by teaching them at instructional level. But that book talks about how he's come to that conclusion, but also how to teach them at a challenging level. He's not a big fan of the term frustration level because that implies we don't want them to be frustrated. No, but we want to challenge them. And the point is, too, he describes in that book what that teaching looks like. And the teaching, he didn't use the term AAA, but you can see it there. First, you take some challenging text that the kids can't read yet. And I love the analogy of going to the gym. If you just want to maintain, then you just do what you currently can do. But if you want to be stronger, you've got to do some work. And it's really helpful to have a trainer there so you don't injure yourself. And that trainer also inspires you to keep doing this work. That's the job of a teacher working with kids who are on grade level. You're their personal trainer. And what you're training is AAA. Okay, let's take this piece of text that's really challenging and let's read it for accuracy. Let's look at what the words mean. Let's go through sentence by sentence. What does this mean? What is this weird pronoun here that's referencing something that was 2 paragraphs ago? Let's make sure that we have the accuracy first. We can read the words, we recognize the words, and we know what they mean. Great. Now let's go back and read it, do repeated reading or partner reading or paired reading, silent reading for kids who are on grade level a few times so that we can build that automaticity. If it's a narrative text, let's pay attention to expression too. And then, of course, access meaning. Can you give me the gist of that? Can you paragraph shrink? Can you write a summary of a paragraph or or a few paragraphs. And we can do that work in small groups. We can do that in large groups. We can assign partners, dyads or triads of kids, and teach them how to read more complex text and improve their fluency, because that's how you read. You read fluently. So it's not just a fluency lesson, it's a reading lesson that involves AAA, accuracy, automaticity, and access meaning. And Tim does a beautiful job of describing how to do that in complex text in that book.
He does. Thank you so much for explaining that, but also thank you for just hosting him on Read Washington. I listened to that webinar. You have such great speakers on there, and you open that up to everyone. But it was outstanding.
It really was. Yes,
it was
and
fantastic.
We've decided, Tim has given us permission to give people access to that. So at some point on the Read Washington website, we'll have recording of that available for people.
Good, because I feel like it cleared up so many myths and misconceptions that people have regarding that. Yes. Okay. So when coaching teachers, because you were an instructional coach, and when I first became an instructional coach, you were my first call. And you sent me reading coach 1 and 2. So when coaching teachers, what types of feedback or modeling have you found most effective to use with teachers, maybe for shifting fluency instruction, but also just working with teachers in general in reading?
Well, Angie, I would go back to that first evening course that I took from Jerry Tyndall. The guy was right. The way you're going to be an effective coach is to use data. It really was true. And the way that I learned to use data is within a model of coaching that I have worked on for many decades now, that we call student-focused coaching.
Yes.
I did work initially at the University of Oregon on that, and then took it to Texas A&M University and worked with Jan Hughes there. And we continued to develop the model. But it is basically a collaborative problem-solving approach to coaching. So if I were working with a teacher, if the teacher wanted some direct feedback, would you please, Jan, Coach Jan, would you please watch me teach and give me feedback? Like, absolutely. I'm happy to do that. Talk to me first about what your goals are, what your issues are. What do you want me to look for? Sort of the pre-conference and the observation and the post-conference. I'm happy to do that. But in the student-focused coaching model, we take, we're happy to do that. But we know from the research, actually, that the most effective way of helping teachers really modify their practice and incorporate new things into their practice is to do collaborative problem solving. So a teacher will say to me, I have a concern about this student, or I have a concern about my 4th period class, or whatever it is. They come to the coach with a problem. And in student-focused coaching, the coaches are not trained to whip out a magic wand and just solve the problem, or tell the teacher, just do this. What we do instead is look at the problem that the teacher has identified, look at what data might be helpful for us. For instance, let's just stay with fluency. If the teacher says, I've got these 5 kids in my 3rd grade class who are they're just not fluent. And I've been doing repeated readings with them and readers theater, and they're not getting better. And I would say to her, well, that's a good question, a good problem you've identified, because we want these 3rd graders to be fluent. But, let's see what's going on in their reading. Let's do some diagnostic assessment to figure out why is it that they're not fluent. And then after we collect that data in the process that we've developed in student-focused coaching, the teacher and I would look at that data together, analyze it together, and start to develop a targeted action plan. What are some things that could be done differently? And if the teacher says, well, I'm not really sure. Now I see what they're lacking some phonics or their background knowledge or whatever, but I'm not sure what to do. The coach can bring some ideas there and model those and support the teacher in incorporating that. But what we find that this collaborative problem solving does is much more richer and complex than just telling teachers, oh, you should do these things. We teach them to use data to come up with a plan. We hopefully expand their repertoire of tools to use through guidance and modeling, or sending them to work with another teacher or whatever. It's just a more rich, complex professional development. But if the teacher wanted me to help her work with fluency, we would use oral reading fluency data. We would use diagnostic data. We would use instruction that followed the AAA framework. And I would work with that teacher until her students were successful.
I love it. You're the best at that. I know
I've
I
been
might be
doing all of
biased.
this for a long time.
Oh my
Angie.
gosh, you're the best at it. Oh, from your recent writing and school visits, because you are still so busy, thank goodness we still have you as a resource. But what are you noticing about how fluency instruction is evolving? Are there bright spots or common gaps that we should know about? What are you seeing?
I would say the bright spots are that more and more teachers and school systems they've discovered the ORF assessment and all the variations of ORF, letter naming fluency, letter sound fluency, nonsense word fluency, all of that. Those are widely being used in schools. And that's a good thing generally. If the teachers, and much more importantly, the leadership, understands what those assessments really do, what they don't do. So the fact that they're in schools, that's a really good start. But a lot of people really are overusing these assessments, or using them in conjunction with assessments that basically do the same thing. They're often relying only on those screening or benchmark assessments to plan interventions, rather than using them to determine what quick, efficient diagnostic assessments should be done. So the gaps are insufficient use of diagnostic assessment, I would say. But and then, because often the system is leaping from fluency-based assessments into intervention, the focus still is getting students to read faster, as if that's going to be, raise their words correct per minute score, not paying attention that words correct per minute is not just a speed assessment. So I still see that more attention to the first component of fluency, well, not the first component, paying too much attention to just the automaticity or even just speed, without that connection. And when they do that, what I see, unfortunately, is that they don't see the big payoff in comprehension. Like, okay, our kids' words correct per minute score went way up, but the kids aren't comprehending better. Because fluency is not automaticity. Fluency is automaticity with expression that connects to comprehension. So the way you fix that is embrace the AAA instructional framework, where accessing meaning is part of it. So I think there's much more attention to decoding instruction. That's better. I'm seeing some more attention to writing, which I'm really excited about. But I think that where we started this conversation, Angie, where you said you're still seeing too much misunderstanding of fluency as being speed, that is something we need to continue to share the information with educators about. That they are so right that the goal is comprehension. You know, that is the goal, comprehension and motivation. So we can tweak our instruction just a little bit. Keep doing those good assessments, maybe add some diagnostic assessments. Keep doing your phonics instruction, yes, but the whole thing needs to be focused much more on comprehension.
I think some people miss that. So I hope that this clears it up, and I hope this really helps people in their understanding of the connection from fluency to comprehension. So you mentioned in that last answer something that's very near and dear to my heart, leadership. So if you could give one message to school leaders, because they play such an important pivotal role in this, but if you could give one message to school leaders about fluency's role in reading success and their role in it as a leader, what would that be?
Well, these days, the first thing I say to leaders always is get yourself a copy of the book It's Possible
Oh,
by Patty Montgomery and Angie Hanlin. Get that book and read it, because
thank
too
you.
many, well, you're welcome. And I say thank you to both of you for writing that, because now I have something to say to leaders instead of, this is complex stuff, your
It
leadership. You
is.
need to be doing the
It's
systems and the
hard.
structures and start with the schedule and it's too complicated. So I just say, get this book. It's Possible. And it gives them a framework, but I also think your book is very, very encouraging. And I think leadership is extremely hard, and a lot of leaders are discouraged. And that,
Yes.
just that wonderful
Yes.
title, It's Possible. Here, people are going to tell you how to do it in this book. So do that. So understanding that the complexity of what true leadership success is going to look like, it has to be all of those things. But in terms of one piece of your informed leadership should be, is understand what fluency really is. And yeah, listen to this podcast, listen to a few other podcasts, read the book that Deb and I wrote on reading fluency.
Yes.
It is really essential. And when you're teaching phonics, you pay attention to fluency. When you're teaching text reading, you're paying attention to fluency. It's I think helping intertwine that notion of fluency from the beginning, as Wolf and Katzer-Cohen told us to do, and helping leaders understand that you should be seeing fluency, a focus on fluency in your pre-kindergarten and kindergarten classrooms, because it's not just about text reading fluency. It's about building those components, developing fluency in progressions, and always paying attention to accessing meaning. It's not about speed. It's about comprehension from the very, very beginning.
Wonderful. So thank you for the shout out to the book. I had no idea you were going to say that. So thank
Always.
you.
Always. It comes out pretty much in all my conversations these days.
Thank you.
So good.
So you did mention the book. You've written so many great ones, but you did mention the one that you wrote with Deb Glazer. So I will put those titles out there for everyone in the
Wonderful.
notes of this. Yes,
Thank you.
and then I do a newsletter called the Literacy Link through my website now. And so I was inspired actually by your recent presentation, but I thought for the December newsletter, what a gift to give everyone for the month of December. I am going to devote that whole newsletter just to fluency. And so I will list all your different resources. And if you have anything you want me to share, I'll gladly, put it in there. But for you, what is next in your research, your writing, your upcoming work? What do you have on the horizon for all of us to look forward to?
Well, I've got a few irons in the fire. Deb and I have actually approached our publisher because we would like to update that book. It's not going to be a huge update because I think we got a lot of things right the first time, but we will be working on that in the coming year. And Jerry Tyndall and I have agreed to do one more round. We are in the
Oh my
process of
gosh.
collecting data right now so that this will be our fourth study. We would love to have it come out in 2026.
Okay.
But we're going to create a new set of norms to update those and write about, see where that takes us
Wonderful. So
post
we'll have new
pandemic.
Tyndall, we'll have
Yeah,
new Tyndall Hasbrouck norms.
yeah, that's our goal. That's our goal. That's our intention.
Oh my gosh, that's exciting. So you have spent decades helping educators better understand fluency. What has that work taught you about persistence, patience, and the power of deep reading?
Mm, persistence and patience. Anybody who goes into this career of being an educator needs persistence and patience. That is for sure. And another thing that I've learned certainly along the way is collaboration, the need for collaboration. This stuff is too complex and often so frustrating, that the only way we can keep going, the only way I've had a career of over 50 years is because of connections with people like you, Angie, and all along the way, my mentors and my students who have inspired me and my colleagues who, sometimes I'm feeling a little discouraged about something and somebody else will have just had a wonderful day engaging with a student or something and they're all excited. So I think persistence, patience, and collaboration are definitely part of what this is all about. But that deep reading, the really paying attention to the wonderful resources that are out there, both research studies, really digging deep into that, but also resting our mind and refreshing our soul with reading the whatever brings joy to us in our life. It's just necessary to keep going.
Well, one final question. I always like to ask a lot of our guests if you could say something and get one message out to all educators and leaders. I mean, I know that's broad, but what is one maybe encouraging statement or something? What's something that you would want to just share with all educators?
Instruction changes lives. That's what I would say. And a good teacher figuring out how to do it, how to make that connection with a child, how to give that child or that student what they need is world changing, life changing, soul changing for both the teacher and the student. But good teaching changes lives. It changes the life of the educator, but it changes the life of a
Yes.
student. And if we do it right and we do it positively with joy and respect and care, we change the world every time we do that. So yeah, let's keep doing it.
Let's. Oh, that was beautiful. Got me choked up. Um, from the bottom of my heart, one, thank you for just being on the podcast. Thank you for being you. You are so gracious and so wise and so encouraging and uplifting. And like you just said, you've always been that person for me. If I ever had a hard day or had a tough spot, I could call you and I always felt uplifted. So thank you for being that. But just thank you for all that you've given all of us educators with all the work you've done and the way you've graciously shared it. Just thank you. I can't thank you enough. I don't know if you wake up and look in the mirror every day and think, golly, I'm just Dr. Jan Hasbrouck and I'm changing the world. But you are. You are. You're just absolutely amazing. So I would not, I wouldn't have this podcast. I would not have ever been a superintendent, never would have been a principal or
Mm,
instructional coach. None of that, full-time consultant, none of it would have happened
mm.
without you. So, gosh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Entirely welcome, Angie. You've been an inspiration to me for a very long time.
Well, I look forward to all of the upcoming work that's coming out. I look forward to an update possibly from you and Deb Glazer.
Yeah.
And I always keep a very close watch on time. I cannot believe an hour is up. This has been the fastest hour of like my whole recent, probably last few weeks and months. My goodness. But thank you for your time. And to everyone that's listened, I hope this has really cleared up some of the myths and misconceptions about fluency. I hope this gives you a clearer picture of what the instruction, intervention, assessments, what all of those look like, how that can shape instruction. And you heard it from Dr. Jan Hasbrouck herself. Instruction changes lives. So teachers, instructional coaches, interventionists and leaders, thank you all so much for all that you're doing to change the lives of the students in your classrooms and in your schools. We need every single one of you to get this work done, and it's such important work for us and the students as well. So as always, thank you for joining us, and thank you for going along on this learning journey that takes both grit and grace. And Grit and Grace, a literacy journey, is a production of Angela Hanlin and Associates. So until next time, we wish you the best of work with you and your students. So thank you for joining us. Bye.
Grit and grit.